As a life coach, part of my job is to help empower my clients to be able to heal from trauma or create the lives that they want or do any number of things that require practicing agency and being able to affect real change in their life. One of the things that people miss, though, is that in order to be able to do that, we have to first have a very clear understanding of what we can control and what we can't. And so much of the coaching that I do that is about relieving people from unnecessary suffering comes from getting these two things confused. I see people spending a lot of energy feeling bad about things that are actually outside of their control, things like what their brain stored as trauma, like subconscious neuroception sort of things, unintentional thoughts that their brain had, emotions that they're feeling. And they spend a lot of time feeling bad about all of that. And because they are spending time believing that they should be able to control a bunch of these things that they don't have control over, they miss the fact that all of that thinking where they beat themselves up and judge themselves, that is actually something that they could control. And all of the, so much of the suffering, guys, I just want to say, like as a summary, so much of the suffering that I help people get out of as a coach comes down to them being confused about this and putting energy and effort into trying to control something that they can't control, thereby not shifting their energy and effort to something that they can control where they can genuinely affect change. It is so important. So one of the things that I do as a coach and as a teacher is I teach people the difference. I teach people what they can control and what they can't so that we can be clear on where they can affect change, and armed with that information and really deeply understanding it, then they can start actually feeling empowered and actually start making changes and building the life that they want to live. So I love this work. And one of the ways that I teach this, one aspect of what we can and can't control is facts versus thoughts. Okay, this is just one of them. There are a lot of them, but I want to present this to you guys. And my guess is if you're looking at this, you're like, okay, facts versus thoughts, like I get it. Most people think they get it and they don't, not really. But I'm guessing you could come up with a working definition of this, okay? But so can most of my clients. Okay, most people understand that, like, okay, facts, they're objective, we don't change them, we can't change them, thoughts are subjective. Like, we get this in a very general sort of way. We get it in the sense that we could define it on paper. The issue is that when it comes right down to it, we have trouble walking this out in our lives. And it's not because of a lack of intelligence. It's not because of an inability to do this work on paper. It's because of how human brains work to a certain extent. So part of this being that in order to be able to work with the massive amounts of input and information that we take in a lifetime, the brain learns to categorize information and to take big chunks of information and put it into groupings so that it's manageable and we can work with it. And it's a beautiful thing, guys. It's a good thing that brains do that. But it can be confusing because in the brain's quest to make information more manageable and more understandable, sometimes it kind of fudges the line between facts and thoughts, and the two get confused in our minds. And sometimes we have a thought that we think so many times it becomes a belief, and we collect a ton of evidence for it. And we end up creating evidence for it because we always take action out of what we believe. That belief, even if it's wildly subjective and wildly interpretive, it feels so true. It feels so true that we can get it confused with a fact. Okay. And this is part of why I really believe in coaching. Like, obviously, I'm a coach. I'm a coach because I believe in coaching. And this is just one aspect of why I believe in coaching, but the ability to have somebody outside of you hold space and to help you see the spaces where you're getting confused about what's a fact and what's a thought and help you clarify those things, it's really, really helpful. Why? So this comes back to what I was talking about earlier, that if you want to be empowered in your life, part of that is knowing what you can control and what you can't. And between the two of these, one you can control and one you can't. And being able to distinguish between the two is huge. So obviously, I'm guessing you guys already figured this out. Facts are the part that we can't control. Thoughts are the part that we can. And I tell you what, I have come across so many teachings in my time as a coach. I have listened to speakers and thought leaders and people who think at such a high level, and they, the way that their brains work are just astounding to me. And I love learning from those people and like gleaning their wisdom and knowledge, and people who really think outside the box. I love it. And I'm constantly exposing myself to those people so that I can hear, what it is they're thinking and what's rolling around in their minds. But this distinction that facts can't be changed and what a fact is and how to distinguish that from a thought, and that thoughts are something that my conscious ones, at least, that I can control, and that I can change how I think about things. I can change beliefs over time. The fact that this is actually something that I have the power to change is perhaps one of the most life-changing concepts that I've come across as a coach. Now, since learning that, I've really learned that there's a good chunk of our thinking, actually about 95% of it, that is completely unconscious. And we're not going to be able to control the automatic thoughts that come up. That is more about, brain wiring and the way that like synapses fire during, down very well-worn pathways within the brain. But there's also this 5% of our mind that is conscious, where we can choose on purpose what we want to think about various situations. And the ability to do that has changed my life. It has changed who I've become as a person and how I show up in situations, and how I see the world and experience my life. Facts can't change. Thoughts we can. So in order to be able to act on that information, we got to be able to tell the difference. Okay. So let's talk about this. Now, most of you, again, I'm guessing could give a working definition of this, but I want to give an example here that shows how this is a bit more nuanced than people often think. All right, so real life example that still makes me laugh. There was a day when we were living in an apartment in downtown Los Angeles, and I had been in the kitchen. I realized the trash was full. I took it out of the trash can, tied the bag, set it down, asked my husband, "Can you take the trash out?" He said yes. And then I think I just went to the other room to coach or do some work. And I came back out and the trash bag was still there. And I was upset about it, right? I was upset because I asked him to take out the trash and he didn't. Or so I thought. Okay. Now, I happen to be deep into this work, and I'm just coming out of sessions where I'm working with clients about what are the facts. Okay, can we identify the facts and really recognize that we can't change facts we just need to accept, but then we get to make intentional decisions about what the thoughts are. And so I'm over here thinking I'm like super evolved as a coach, getting to make, it's like, okay, well, like what really are the facts? What is the thought that I want to choose on purpose? And guys, I thought I was doing so well. I totally had the facts wrong. So what were the facts? Now, sometimes people come in a situation like this, and there's something going on, with a spouse. And when I ask them what the facts are, they actually tell me something like, my partner is not trustworthy, or they're irresponsible, or I can't count on them to do what they say they want to do, what they say they're going to do. Okay. So they'll come in and say like, I repeatedly ask my partner to do things and they don't do them, and they're just not dependable. Now, is that a fact or a thought? Now, a lot of my clients do come in and they do think it's a fact because they believe it and they can back it up, and they want to give me 10 examples or more of all their evidence why the fact is actually my husband isn't trustworthy. Okay, but I'm guessing most of you can see that that's actually a thought. So the actual facts in those situations would be all of the objective situations. So the situations that they're telling me, like, here's my evidence, breaking those down to its most factual, provable in court versions of them. Those are the facts. And so it's like, okay, we have this situation where this happened, and this situation where this happened, and this situation where this happened, and this situation where this happened. And the truth is that we're taking all of those facts and interpreting it with this thought of, my partner's not trustworthy, I can't depend on it. Okay. Now, a lot of my clients can understand the difference between those two. Now, in the moment, in the scenario with the trash bag, I caught myself in that one. Like, I knew that putting a label on my partner or deciding that the fact that he didn't take the trash out means that he doesn't love me. Like, I was on it as a coach. Like, I didn't attach meaning to it. I didn't, put a subjective label on it. I didn't say things like, he never does what he says he's going to do. I caught the big ones. Okay, I caught the big ones. I didn't go to always or never. I didn't make meaning. I didn't like judge him or put this label on him. Like, I caught all of that. Okay, that those would all be thoughts and those would not be facts. And a lot of my clients can get that too. But here's the thing. When I tried to identify what the fact was, I thought the fact was my husband didn't take out the trash. I asked him to take out the trash and he didn't. Friends, that was not the fact. That was actually my interpretation of the facts. The actual fact was the conversation we had before, just down to the words. At this, this time I said these words, at this time he said yes. Gone for this many minutes, come back in, bag of trash on my kitchen floor. And really the fact is the bag of trash on my kitchen floor. That's the part that I can prove, because I can take a clock, here's the clock, here's the trash. And what I could prove is at a certain time, there is a bag of trash on my kitchen floor. But the fact is not, he didn't take the trash out. And this is why this example is so funny, because whenever he actually came back and we talked about it and I, confronted him about the thing, the truth is he did take the trash out. He picked it up just like he said he would, and he took it to where the trash goes, and it was full. Okay, the trash chute where the trash went down was blocked. And I think in this situation, he actually walked all the way down the stairs to the dumpster itself, and it was full. And so he brought the trash back up. He did take the trash out. And what I thought the fact was he didn't take out the trash actually was not correct. He did take out the trash. He just also brought it back. Okay. Those are the facts. Do you see what I'm saying here? That the difference between a fact and a thought, as much as you can understand it on an intellectual level, there are very, very small ways in which we are interpreting facts all the time and turning it into thoughts. And half the time we don't even see it. Again, this is why I think coaching is so powerful, to have somebody outside of yourself see this. And it's so much easier for me to do this with my clients whenever I'm looking for it, and this is part of my job description, than it is to do it for myself. Sometimes I see it for myself. Sometimes I miss it, like this one where it's nuanced. Okay, why does this matter? Okay, because I think a lot of people are like, okay, like what do people say? Like, you're splitting hairs here. This is just splitting hairs, but it's not. This is not splitting hairs. This is not that. This is so significant in any sort of work that you're going to do. Because again, in this situation, my interpretation of the bag of trash being on the floor, meaning that my husband didn't do what he said he was going to do, was incorrect. And it led to an emotional state and words and this whole cascade of actions that was actually incorrect. Now, in this case, it wasn't a big deal. Like, I wasn't like vastly upset. I didn't, say anything that was like awful and that I regretted, but I did have to experience, but I was having thoughts that were not true, that were an interpretation of facts that I believed were true, that led to emotions that were negative that I didn't need to experience, that led to me basically confronting my husband instead of just simply being curious about why the trash was still there, because I'd already interpreted in my mind that the trash being there meant that he didn't take it out, even though that was false. And so this, not getting this part right, led to a whole cascade of events that affected my life experience. Now, again, in this situation, it wasn't a huge deal, but I used this very simple example to make a point. But I guarantee you guys, this is happening in big situations as well. It's happening in those big, important situations. And our inability to do this creates suffering where we don't need to have suffering. Okay. All right, so where else is this important? Why are we talking about this? Okay, I'm talking about this specifically today because I have a monthly membership program where, you know, a group of people come together and we coach and we learn, and we're about to start a series called How to Do Everything. And in that series, what I'm doing is I'm taking the most common concepts, like no matter what coach you're learning from, no matter whether we're talking about, you know, not over drinking, or we're talking about building businesses, or we're talking about relationships, that no matter what you're doing, there are certain concepts that are the same that we need to understand and be able to utilize in order to do whatever it is that we're doing. These are the most foundational concepts that you see across all the things. So it's called How to Do Everything, and we're starting this series within my membership, Healing Growth. And so one of the first concepts we're going to be talking about is acceptance. Okay. And most people get really confused about acceptance, and they get confused about acceptance because they can't tell the difference between these two things, or they don't know why it matters. So I'll give you guys a preview, whether you're in the program or not, that whenever I talk to people about acceptance, the only thing I'm asking them to accept ever are facts. Because guys, let's think about it. What else are we going to do with them? If the point of a fact is that we cannot change it, what else are we going to do with it? We can sit around being upset about it. We can argue with it. We can say it shouldn't be that way all day long. And it's still, if it's a fact, it's going to be a fact. If you want to stop suffering over things, we have to move towards acceptance. But acceptance is something I only tell my people to apply to actual facts. But because most people are confusing facts with thoughts, what happens is they're actually interpreting the facts, and then they're trying to accept their negative narrative about the facts, and that is when they suffer. So we're going to talk about acceptance. We're going to break it down. We're going to do the deeper work. It's going to be fantastic. Can't wait. But in order for acceptance to make sense, facts versus thoughts have to make sense, and a handful of other concepts have to make sense. So this is one of them. Acceptance applies to facts only. Thoughts we can change. Now, where does that overlap? Just because I have to always be as clear as I can be. Anything that happens in the past, you can't change. Even 1 second in the past, it becomes a fact as soon as it's over. So let's say I have a thought that says, let's go with something like, I don't know, I judge another person, you know, like they should raise their kids differently. And I have that thought. Okay. Now that's a thought based on some facts that I saw. But as soon as it's even 1 second in the past, I no longer can change it. I can't go back and change a thought that I've already had. You can't unring a bell. Once it's done, it's done. Once I've had the thought, I've had the thought. Okay. So when thoughts are in the past, they become unchangeable facts. I hope that makes sense. Once a thought is in the past, it becomes an unchangeable fact, in the sense of like, I had that thought. You know, I could look, you know, it was 2:14 in the afternoon, and I had the thought of they should raise their kids differently. Okay, I had that judgmental thought at that time, and now it's over and in the past. That's the fact. Now, so my control isn't in going back and trying to argue that I never should have thought that in the first place. Acceptance means I did think it. That's it. I did. Now, what do I want to think about that? What story do I want to tell about myself for the fact that I had that thought? See what I'm talking about here with what we can and can't control? Because most people spend all their energy arguing with the facts. Had this thought. I shouldn't have had it. Judging ourselves for it. That's so awful of me. What kind of a person thinks that way? I'm so terrible. All this judgment. And what we're not understanding is like, The fact of the thought that we have is over and can't be changed. But what we can change is the meaning we give to it. How do we think about ourselves now? What are we going to think in the future? What are we going to do on purpose? Suddenly, what's happening right now in this moment, the thought that we're having right now, the thought that we have 1 second from now, the thought that we have 3 seconds from now, that's all stuff that we can control consciously. Those are all thoughts. And this is where people spin their wheels. They spend so much time arguing that they should never have had the thought in the first place, that they miss the fact that the thought they're having now is one they could actually control. Okay, so thoughts in the past become unchangeable facts. The thoughts you control are the ones that are happening right now, or the ones that happen in the future as you are conscious of your thinking. Okay, good stuff. It's life-changing stuff. So again, we're doing this over in my program, Healing Growth. Come join us. Okay, it's fantastic. And this, again, this is like, if this was helpful to you, this is like a pre-concept concept before we actually even get to the good stuff. Hope to see you inside.